economies too, to keep in mind.
Yes.
A reminder, these are live pictures coming from inside the Great Hall of the People. President Trump and President Xi have been meeting behind closed doors for the past hour or so after that grand welcome ceremony in front of the Great Hall of the People. They will now be speaking here jointly in front of this large delegation here. The table is set for this big ceremony as well. Keep in mind, President Trump has brought with him more than 24 business leaders from companies as varied as Boeing, Westinghouse, other American firms here to try to sign and ink some different deals with these industries. So as we wait for these remarks here, let me ask you, Mr. Dodd, when you look at this trade imbalance between the United States and China, which is large, it is shrinking, but it's still large. Where do you see this going from here? Do you feel like China is really making this a priority to try to shrink this imbalance?
Yeah, China do want to shrink this imbalance, but it's a very difficult task. I think a balanced trade is a wrong goal that the Trump administration set. I think if we go to the U.S. university to ask those mainstream economists how many of them agree with this goal, I think 99% of them don't agree with that. I think the imbalance of the trade is not an outcome of China's policy, or maybe it partly related to some policies, but it's not a strategy for Chinese government to pursue this trade surplus over the U.S. It's also not in China's interest. I mean, generally speaking, China is a developing country and also a manufacturing power. Mm-hmm. While U.S. is the manufacturing part of its economy has already basically go to other countries. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard for this kind of two countries to achieve a trade balance. Mm-hmm. Just like this, also related like the product chain. Like if you buy an iPhone in the United States, it's made in China. Yeah, but actually China import the parts from the neighboring countries and the regions like Japan, like Korea, like Taiwan. And so China have this trade deficit with Japan and Korea.
Well, and also a critical point with that, too, as the iPhone example, it is made in China, but it's designed in California, and the marketing teams are in California. Some of those higher wage jobs are still in the United States.
The profit, I think the Apple company got the profit. Actually, China only have very limited profit from that part.
And so we keep on hearing this complaint from some that made in China, too much is made in China. Is that fair, though? Because that has also allowed low prices for Americans.
Right. If Donald Trump followed through with his campaign threat to put a 45% tariff on products made in China, prices in Walmart would go up 30%.
Yes.
I mean, your middle-class people in America would be paying a lot more for products. So that doesn't compute. Now, in terms of the Donald Trump business people he brought, what's interesting to me is I call these old economy people. Yes, they're big companies like Boeing, but they're not the companies of the future, the Apples, the Facebooks. They are the CEOs who met with President Xi Jinping last week when they were in town for the Tsinghua School of Economics and Management Advisory Board meeting. So that I found interesting. The kinds of jobs that Donald Trump is trying to bring to the U.S. on this trip are traditional jobs, aerospace jobs, jobs with DuPont, the Dow chemical companies, as opposed to these new economy jobs. And I think that's probably a mistake in the long run. That's why American economists would say that Donald Trump's direction is not necessarily the right one, but the idea of trying to create more jobs in the U.S. you can't argue with.
Yeah, and we've been told that the two presidents are having a short break after a long meeting this morning. And the meeting this morning actually went a little overtime. It was scheduled, the remarks were scheduled at 10:40. And whether, the meeting went overhead was a good sign, we are not sure. But on Wednesday, a multi-billion-dollar deal were being signed between the two countries. How do you look at those trade deals? Will that translate to trade breakthroughs between the two countries?
I think so. And particularly after the deals that we already signed, I think Vice Premier Wang Yang said this is just a warming up. We may see more today. So I very much look forward to it. But of course, I don't think those deals that we are going to see today can balance the trade because the imbalance is very huge, right? I don't think we can just go through this process. And actually, many deals today we are going to see it actually is packed into one day's visit. It can be signed maybe one month early or 1 month later, but for this visit we pack it into wrap it into a pack today. So sign it to as a outcome of the visit. It's good, but I think it's helpful. Yeah, but of course, I don't think it can help can resolve the issue of the trade imbalance. So that will exist for a very long time, I think.
I thought that was an interesting point you brought up too, Rick, about the old economy figures that President Trump brought with him, especially considering that China seems to be focusing a lot on these new economies and on the green energy as one example, solar panels, things like that. So China's clearly trying to break away from this manufacturing past.
Green energy is an excellent example because that's one where I see China and Germany leading the world. The American government and the Republican Congress are against government assistance to green energy. They are very much controlled by the fossil fuels industry, and it gives China a great opportunity because the research is so cost intensive that you really do need public-private partnerships. In China, the government is supplying that money. In Germany, it's a high priority. The United States needs to do it, or else the private sector is going to lag behind. Yes, there's innovation. There's a lot of green energy innovation in the U.S., but to make it cost-effective, to make it profitable, you need more input from the government. That is not coming from the Trump administration because of its relentless focus on fossil fuels in its energy department.
And meanwhile, President Xi is making it a clear focus of his administration that the country should invest in green energy.
Yes.
And so talk about that then. Is there any kind of hesitation, though, or fear, considering that China relies so much on fossil fuels, on coal plants? I mean, there's a lot of jobs at stake here as well.
Yeah, I think this is the balance that Chinese government need to think about. I think, on the one hand, we want a clear air, and on the other hand, jobs.
Yeah.
Right. This is a very tough, choice for any government. I think, in past 10 years, Chinese government has already decided to pay the price. This is a difficult process. We know that, but we think that through invest into the great green energy, and also by expanding or import LNGs, natural gas, oils is to replace the goals. We think that the priority is the clean air, is fuel efficiency. But at the same time, we try to help those people lag behind. We try to help them, give them new job opportunity, to give them training. I think this is the correct way to help those people. You cannot say we just save those job opportunity, then let's live in the polluted air. This is something that unacceptable and inconsistent with the Green China strategy that President Xi is pursuing in his term.
Yeah, and the two presidents will take, the remarks will happen at any moment from now. And with that saying, what would you expect from these remarks after this morning's meeting? What would you be listening out for?
Well, I think we will hear personal comments about the relationship. I also think they will talk about having fruitful dialogue. When you hear diplomatic speak, I don't think you'll hear anything about breakthrough, but I think it will be tonality. Now, it would be big news if they announced some sort of breakthrough, but I think that's later. I think right now it's going to be about the relationship.
So help us understand, too, kind of what's happening behind the scenes, if you can, since you've covered, the White House for so long. This is running a little late. We were expecting them to come out about half an hour ago or so. This happens. This is normal. What do you think is happening right now behind the scenes between these two leaders?
I think the conversations continue. This is very typical of Donald Trump. When he has a leader he likes, he goes over time. He did that with Vladimir Putin also. And the others, he just cuts off. And so it's important if you're trying to analyze Trump to do that. Bill Clinton, when I was covering him, he always went over. You just couldn't stop him from talking. So that you couldn't read anything into it. But with Trump, it really is important. It sends a signal the longer he goes. So the longer we wait here, the better the news is.
So you're looking at the live picture. Some of the senior political officials from both sides are present in the room. You know, Chinese ambassador to Washington, Cui Tiankai, is in the room, and Ms. Liu Yandong, another senior political leader in China, and from the U.S. side, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Jared Kushner is also being there. And during this trip, Trump will be meeting some of the biggest political names, business names here in China. What would you expect come out from that?
Well, I think that his goal is to try to figure out how to. I think the bottom line is create jobs in the U.S. That's what he wants to take home with him. He wants to build the relationship and the global issues. But Donald Trump is in political trouble in the U.S., and I think he really needs to figure out a way to connect directly with his middle-class supporters about jobs, about the economy. So I think that's the take-home he wants, not necessarily something on North Korea, although he wants progress, obviously.
But is he going to get that take-home that he wants so badly? Do you think he's going to get it here in China?
That's why I think they lowered expectations. I think he will get something that he can call a victory. But let's see. We have to wait to see if we have that surprise that exceeds expectations.
Well, and part of the victory for China is just putting on such a show here, the pageantry as he welcomes the president.
And also, besides those specific issues, specific deliverables, I think one thing I personally are waiting to hear is how the two presidents, particularly President Trump, what kind of terminology will he use? How does he view the U.S.-China relations? How does he view China?
Sorry to interrupt, but both presidents, President Xi Jinping and President Donald Trump, is entering the conference hall now. I think both. All right, let's listen in.
Mr. President, can we start our expanded meeting now?
It is
my real pleasure to have this expanded meeting with the Honorable President Trump. Here, let me once again, on behalf of the Chinese government and the Chinese people, extending warm welcome to President Trump on your state visit to China. From yesterday afternoon to the present, we have had in-depth exchange of ideas on China-U.S. relations and important issues of shared interest. We reached many common understandings. We both believe that China-U.S. relations are important to the well-being of our two peoples and bear on peace, stability, and prosperity of the world. For China and the United States, cooperation is the only viable choice, and win-win cooperation can take us to a better future. We agree that China-U.S. relations have made important progress this year. We have agreed to further promote strategic guidance of summit diplomacy for bilateral relations, strengthen interactions at high and all levels, make the most of the 4 high-level dialogue mechanisms, expand interactions and cooperation on economy and trade, mil-to-mil relations, law enforcement, people-to-people exchange, and in other areas, enhance communication and cooperation on the nuclear issue on the Korean Peninsula, Afghanistan, and other major international and regional issues, and work together to take China-U.S. relations to even greater development. The China-U.S. relationship now stands at a new starting point. China is ready to work with the United States to enhance cooperation and properly manage differences in a spirit of mutual respect and mutual benefit. This way, we will enable our two peoples, the region, and people across the world to benefit more from China-U.S. relations. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you. There can be no more important subject than China-U.S. relation. We have between us, and we have to include some other countries which would quickly come in, we have a capacity to solve world problems for many, many years to come. Our meeting last night was absolutely terrific. Our dinner was beyond that. We had a dinner that was going to last quickly 20, 25 minutes because I was traveling and you were so nice. And you said, we'll just do a quick dinner. And I think it had to last at least 2 hours. And we enjoyed every minute of it with your beautiful wife and Melania together. Their relationship is a great one, and our relationship has already proven to be a great one. Our meeting this morning in front of your representatives and my representatives was excellent, discussing North Korea, and I do believe there's a solution to that, as you do, discussing trade with the United States, knowing that the United States really has to change its policies because they've gotten so far behind on trade with China and, frankly, with many other countries. And I have great respect for you for that because you're representing China. But it's too bad that past administrations allowed it to get so far out of kilter. But we'll make it fair, and it'll be tremendous for both of us. My feeling toward you is an incredibly warm one. As we said, there's great chemistry. And I think we're going to do tremendous things for both China and for the United States. And it is a very, very great honor to be with you. Thank you very much. The hosting of the military parade this morning was magnificent, and the world was watching. I've already had people calling from all parts of the world. They were all watching. Nothing you can see is so beautiful. So I just want to thank you for the very warm welcome, and I look forward to many years of success and friendship, working together to solve not only our problems, but world problems and problems of great danger and security. I believe we can solve almost all of them, and probably all of them. Thank you very much for having us. Very much appreciated.
And that right there, President Trump and President Xi speaking to each other inside the Great Hall of the People for a historic trip for President Trump visiting Beijing. And a lot to unpack here. President Trump giving a lot of praise to President Xi.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He was touting the words like, I feel warm to you, our relationship. We have great chemistry, and he has high praises for the president.
Yeah, so your thoughts on all this? I mean, considering that he used such warm terms, magnificent, great chemistry, everything that she just mentioned.
I think you see the personalities of the two presidents right there. I mean, President Xi Jinping was very disciplined and reserved, positive, but didn't tell us too much. One thing he said that I thought was